Good evening, my name's Jason and welcome to Shed Life Oz. This evening I'm going to talk to you about state versus private, and particularly talk about the management of state-owned assets by both the state government and private enterprise. I was incarcerated for a fairly long time, and during that time I spent time in both state-owned and state-run assets or prisons and privately run state-owned prisons. And it's the privately owned state-run prisons I really want to talk about. I don't believe that they're great value for money for the taxpayer, and I don't believe they deliver good outcomes for the community. I believe the state-run prisons are more consistent, more accountable, and deliver an outcome that more to what the community expects from their prison system. The time I spent in privately run prison, singular, was at a southeast Queensland prison that had just changed management from an American-based management company to a British-based management company. And it was a service company. And as a service company, it had interests in Australian Railways, National Railway, and our defence contract, among other things. And if they manage those assets the way they manage their prisons, it's disastrous. Private management of state-run assets is a process of a company coming in and taking as much value or taking as much money out of the state as they can with the least expenditure that they can get away with. They run state assets into the ground. The state prison I was in, when this new company took over, there was a very limited unionism in the prison amongst the staff there. By the time that I left 3.5 years later, the whole staff was union, and that would suggest that the company that came in was screwing the staff, which is funny from a prisoner's point of view, because disenfranchised staff make vulnerable staff. Good for the crims, not so good for the public, not so good for the staff. Vulnerable screws are just that, they're vulnerable to all sorts of things. But it's like I said, it's an advantage to the crims, and it gives us a bit of a leg up. That the state allows this to happen is crazy. The amount of discrepancies with what was really happening and what was reported by the management of the prison was high. They used to be fined for every time there was a security breach. For a minor security breach, they'd cop a $250,000 fine. For a major security breach, they copped a $500,000 fine. And this was an issue for the management, obviously. And it got to the stage where the staff were fucking up as a means of getting at the management. Initially, it started off that they would sweep things under the carpet and hide things. By the end of the tenure at that prison, before it was shut down and revamped, the staff were fucking up and costing the company money, possibly deliberately, maybe not, but they were definitely reporting everything. Nothing was swept under the carpet anymore, which was costing the service company at the time a lot of money. But as a prisoner there, it was an interesting place because they supplied the bare minimum of what was required to meet the criteria. So you get issued with your blankets and sheets when you turn up in the prison, and that's yours to look after, and your pillow. The pillow was a bit of Dacron folded in half, but you were allowed to buy your own pillows, so you could, if you had the money, you could buy a feather down pillow. So it was ludicrous what we could buy at that prison. Coffee machines, video machines, you didn't like cooking on aluminium saucepans, you could buy stainless steel saucepans. Wall units, if you wanted to put wall units in, because the service provider provided nothing, but they would allow you to spend whatever you wanted to keep you happy. It was a good place if you had money and you had some sort of enterprise going for yourself. If you were there on your bones of your arse, it was a bit of a struggle. So that's just an example of how this prison worked. It was interesting. It was violent. It was chaotic. It wasn't a bad place to be a lot of the time. You watch people sink and swim there very quickly with this. The quickest way to get progression to a farm was to sleep with the female officer, because they would bash the prisoner, sack the officer, and send him to the farm to shut him the fuck up. So, good luck all the way around. You got your end away, and you got progression to a farm. A little bit of a hiding on the way through, but generally, yeah, it's pretty ludicrous. But everything's swept under the carpet, and no one's any the wiser for it. So, and that's just one example. I started education there, started a fine arts degree, and they've decided that they're going to charge us all for photocopying 20 cent a copy, and all my stuff came on CD-ROM that sometimes I could read, sometimes I didn't, so I'd get it printed out. They decided that they were going to bill me for that, and once I decided that 20 cent was ludicrous at the time, that if they were going to charge me 20 cent, they best give me a tax declaration on that and declare the GST on it, because I'm sure they're reporting this as they deduct it out of my trust account. And that all got a little bit hard for them, so all my photocopying ended up being done for free, because they weren't ever going to declare anything. They're just taking money off crims and putting it in their coffers at whatever. They run courses through the TAFE college, and the TAFE facilitator would come in to run the course, and he finds out that he's running an AutoCAD course, but he's teaching it from a free demonstrator disc off the front of a PC magazine. Couldn't teach the course as it was written, had to modify his course to fit the little content that was on the free demonstrator disc, because they didn't see fit to pay AutoCAD licensing on any of the AutoCAD that they were using to teach the course. They just used the free demonstrator disc. And every month they would have a prisoner go through and clean the registry files so they could reload the disc for its another 3 month of trial. So little things like that, they're minor frauds, but they're frauds, and it was the whole culture of this service provider, this service company that was meeting in the prison at the time. Their staff started off thinking they were great because they put in new lounges and that, and they cut all their wages. It was comical to watch, because they were, like I said, just a totally disenfranchised staff. The prisoners all passed their courses. They bullied prisoners into courses. They used a punishment process inside the corrective services punishment process, so that they could punish prisoners without it actually appearing on their records. They used a rewards basis. So you were a standard, or a basic, standard or enhanced prisoner, and that was a classification that they gave you. And it's inside their own framework, so that you didn't actually get breached for breaches of discipline, because that reflected badly on their management. But they just took away your rights to movement and your rights to buy anything from the commissary or buy-up store. So it's just another subversion of the system, because no one ever got breached for anything, so their official QCS record, corrective services record, was unblemished, but the internal punishments for being caught with drugs or whatever remained an in-house matter, so that the state wasn't aware of the rampant drug culture that was occurring in that prison at that time. That it was just a crazy jail. It was just a lot of fun to be had. Inside the chaos, there's room to move. Inside disenfranchised staff, there's room to move. There's room for everyone to have space, I guess. Inside chaos, there's room. And it was just chaos. They would run a drug rehab program that they would receive funding for the government to do on top of their contract rates. So they received a heap of funding for that, and it was crazy town. Like what they put into the units there for those fellas on rehab. They're the most stoned people in the jail. Like they had a ball, and they had the best of everything, the best food, the best protein, the best of everything, and it was a great rort. That after a while, the state government got rid of, like this jail shut down, it got rebuilt, and it got opened up as a young offenders jail, and I think it's back to being a normal jail again. But they've got rid of contractors out of the state system, and that's not a bad thing. Contractors inside the state prison system are as big a criminals as the criminals they're looking after. They're just rotting the system and rotting the taxpayer. If you want privatisation, let the private people build the private prison, and then they've got some skin in the game, and they will look after their infrastructure and not rot like mad, and run the infrastructure down. That's just a thought, or my observations on that process and how it works, that they allow them into defence, these same contractors. They allow them into our railway system to manage our railways is scary. Like, how these things work without falling apart, I don't know. But yeah, so that's my little blurb for the evening. My thought on private and state-run state-run assets. I don't believe there's any place for private enterprise running state-run assets. Private enterprise should run their own assets and have some skin in it, because running state-run assets, they just run the assets into the ground and they deliver shit outcomes for the taxpayer and the community. Thank you for your time this evening, and good night.